somewhere on a predator-free island off the coast of New Zealand, a fat, flightless, moss-green parrot is currently climbing a tree in complete darkness, using nothing but its claws, its beak, and its own stubborn will to survive. This is the kakapo, and if you think you already know what it is, you're probably wrong. Most people assume it's simply a parrot that can't fly, a sad, broken, unlucky version of every other bird you've ever seen. But the kakapo isn't broken at all. It's actually one of the strangest, most successful evolutionary experiments the animal kingdom has ever produced. A bird so unusual that scientists still argue about how it manages to exist. Today, we're going to unpack exactly why the kakapo forgot how to fly, how it nearly vanished from the planet entirely, and why the tiny handful of birds left alive today are, without exaggeration, some of the most closely monitored, carefully protected animals on the entire planet. Let's start with the obvious question. Why can't the kakapo fly? For millions of years, New Zealand had almost no land predators at all. No cats, no rats, no stoats, no foxes, nothing crawling around the forest floor looking for a bird to eat. In an environment like that, flying stops being a survival tool and quickly starts being an enormous, unnecessary waste of energy. Flight muscles are expensive to build and expensive to maintain, and if nothing on the ground can catch you, there's simply no reason to keep paying that cost. So over countless generations, the kakapo's ancestors slowly redirected all of that wasted energy elsewhere. Its wing muscles shrank down, its breastbone lost the deep keel that flying birds need to anchor those muscles, and in exchange, its legs became thick, powerful, and built for endurance instead. The kakapo essentially traded the sky for the ground, and for a very long time, that trade worked out brilliantly. And it isn't just flightless, it's also enormous by parrot standards. The kakapo is the heaviest parrot on the planet, with some males tipping the scales at close to 9 pounds, an almost comical weight for a bird. Its body plan looks less like a typical parrot, and more like a strange hybrid, a rounded, owl-faced head sitting on top of a chunky, moss-colored body, with a waddling, duck-like walk that somehow still gets it exactly where it needs to go. Despite losing the ability to fly, the kakapo didn't lose the ability to climb. In fact, it became one of the best climbers in the entire bird world, hauling its heavy body straight up the trunks of the tallest trees, using its powerful legs and its beak as a grappling hook. And once it reaches the canopy, it has one last trick up its sleeve. It can spread its wings and glide back down to the forest floor, using them like a parachute rather than a set of functioning wings, controlling its descent instead of generating lift. The kakapo is also almost entirely nocturnal, which makes sense once you understand how it actually survives out there. Its eyes are adapted for low light rather than sharp daytime vision, and it leans heavily on an incredible sense of smell to find food in the dark, something almost unheard of in the parrot world. It can sniff out fruit, seeds, roots, and moss from a distance, then spend the night quietly working its way across the forest floor, chewing through tough plant material with a specialized bill, built almost like a mortar and pestle. When it senses danger, it doesn't run and it can't fly away. Instead, it freezes completely still, relying on its mottled green and black feathers to blend perfectly into the mossy forest floor. For millions of years, against the predators that actually existed in New Zealand, this strategy worked perfectly. Freezing made the kakapo essentially invisible. But then humans arrived, and they didn't come alone. Along with the first human settlers came dogs, and eventually rats, cats, and stoats, followed with later waves of colonization. And this is where the kakapo's greatest strength instantly became its greatest weakness. Freezing in place is a brilliant defense against a predator that hunts by sight. It is completely useless against a predator that hunts by smell. Rats and stoats didn't need to see the kakapo sitting motionless in the undergrowth. They could simply follow their noses straight to it. A bird that had spent millions of years perfecting the art of staying still and staying hidden was suddenly facing enemies that its defenses were never designed to handle. Populations collapsed with terrifying speed. A bird that once numbered in the tens of thousands across the entire country was pushed to the very edge of extinction within just a few generations. By the mid-1990s, the situation had become almost unthinkable. The entire global population of kakapo had dropped to somewhere around 50 individual birds. 50, not 50,000, not 50 per island, just 50 kakapo, left alive on the whole planet. At that point, conservationists made a drastic decision. They gathered up every single known kakapo and physically relocated them to small, isolated islands where every last rat, stoat, and predator could be completely removed. It was an enormous, painstaking operation, essentially building a series of predator-free arks and placing the entire species inside them. And slowly, agonizingly slowly, it started to work. Because kakapo breed so rarely, sometimes going years between nesting attempts, tied to the fruiting cycles of certain native trees, conservationists had to get creative. Every single kakapo alive today has a name. Every one is tracked with a radio transmitter. Every single nest is monitored around the clock during breeding seasons, with teams of researchers checking on eggs, weighing chicks, and in some cases, hand-raising babies that need extra help surviving. Scientists have even used artificial insemination to boost genetic diversity in a population that has become so small and so inbred that fertility itself has become a serious ongoing problem. This isn't just casual birdwatching. This is one of the most intensive, hands-on conservation efforts for any species anywhere on Earth, and it is happening for a bird that most people outside of New Zealand have honestly never even heard of. And then there's the mating system, which might be the strangest part of this entire story. Male kakapo don't simply find a mate the way most birds do. Instead, they dig a network of shallow bowls into the ground, arranged like an amphitheater, and then spend weeks, sometimes months, standing in those bowls at night, inflating their chest like a balloon, and releasing a deep, booming call that can travel for miles through the forest. It sounds less like a bird and more like a distant heartbeat pulsing through the trees. Females wander the forest, listening for the loudest, most impressive booming male, and choose their mate based purely on that performance. It is the only parrot species on the planet known to use this kind of lek breeding system, and it means an individual male can spend an entire season booming every single night, with absolutely no guarantee that a single female will ever show up. Despite everything working against it, the kakapo has one more surprising trait that keeps showing up in conservation stories: an almost startling friendliness toward humans. These are birds that will climb onto researchers, nibble curiously at boots and camera equipment, and generally behave with a kind of fearless, trusting curiosity that most wild animals simply do not have. That trust likely comes from millions of years without natural predators to fear, but it also means these birds have almost no instinctive wariness around the new threats humans accidentally introduced. It's a strange, bittersweet trait, charming and endearing, but also a quiet reminder of exactly why this species ended up so vulnerable in the first place. Today, thanks to decades of relentless, expensive, and deeply personal conservation work, kakapo numbers have slowly crept up from that terrifying low of around 50 birds to a few hundred individuals living across a handful of predator-free islands. It's still critically endangered. It's still one of the rarest birds on the planet. But it is no longer standing on the very last edge of extinction the way it was a few decades ago. The kakapo didn't forget how to fly because it was broken or unfit. It simply evolved perfectly for a world that no longer exists, a world without predators on the ground, and when that world changed overnight, humans became the only thing standing between this strange, booming, moss-colored parrot and total disappearance. Sometimes the strangest animals on Earth aren't strange because something went wrong. They're strange because they adapted flawlessly to circumstances we can barely imagine, right up until everything around them changed too fast for evolution to keep up. And maybe that's the real lesson hiding inside this whole story, that the traits which make a creature seem odd, slow, or out of place are very often the exact same traits that once made it perfectly, brilliantly suited to the world it was born into, long before anything else showed up to change the rules.